Thanks, Stephen. My name's Jarrod. I'm an alcoholic. And been sober since October 7th, 2007. And really grateful for that. And, I get these small reminders that are these huge gifts of this program and being around for a little bit. I got to lead a discussion meeting with a group in the Atlanta area on Wednesday of this week because a guy that I grew up with in Arlington, he went his separate ways, I went mine, and I was sponsoring a guy here in Dallas a few years ago, and he moved out to Atlanta, and he was trying to find a sponsor. Well, he ends up rooming with this guy that I grew up with, and we didn't know that either of us were sober, and just this wonderful, I don't know of another kinship and place of love that Alcoholics Anonymous brings. And that was what I needed. I didn't know that's what I needed until I got in here. My childhood, I say these things today not in a place of victimhood. I say this in a place of having worked through a lot of this stuff and an understanding of it, and I feel that it's important to share these things. My childhood was, my biological father left my mom before I was born. And then she married her best friend when I was 2, and he was an alcoholic. And, with my brother, and then they had 2 other children, and it was a very volatile childhood. There was a lot of screaming, a lot of getting taken out of, bedrooms in the middle of the night to take to my grandparents, and I just wake up in the morning, I'm like, oh, kick ass, my grandfather's going to make me, gingerbread pancakes, not knowing the trauma of that, but something of just in that type of fear. And there was love there was, and we know, when someone's in the sickness and the other partner is in it too, it's just a volatile, it's a volatile way for any person to be raised in. And, so my mom divorced him, and she was a single mom with 4 kids, and the emotional availability wasn't incredibly high. Just when you have that many children that you need to be present for, and you're in charge of taking care of all their needs, there were needs that weren't met. When I was 13, I lost my 2 best friends in a pool accident. They drowned. And then when I turned 18, I lost my other 2 best friends and their fathers in a plane accident. And so I bring these things up because during all that time, I was just in survival. I didn't know what a child was supposed to do. I was taking on things that, nobody should ever have to encounter, let alone a child, and try to learn how to process and everything. And, I know for a lot of us, we're survivalists. It's just like you come out of the womb and it's in survival mode and picking up adult, survival skills when your frontal lobe isn't even close to even being developed. And so I say those things, and that, those things weren't my fault. They became my responsibility when I became an adult, and I didn't know that. So there was that trauma hood of bringing all that stuff in and, just doing what I can to survive in that space. And, I look at it today, and it's like, I haven't been in the program for a little bit. I absolutely know why I drank. When my 2 friends died when I was 18, we were I was at rec center playing basketball with a bunch of my friends, and one of their moms came up and told them. And a guy came over and told me, and he said, well, Jarrod, everything happens for a reason. And as a very curious seeker in life, that was one of those doors that I can remember that I just shut the door of, like, this isn't how life's supposed to be, and this does not happen for a reason, and twin gun salute to God and any of that, because I had this pattern, of, and especially men, leaving, so that fear of abandonment and not knowing how to, not really knowing what that was to begin with, and I did not know how to soothe that, and I did I found out really quickly what could soothe that. It was, just with friends, but, taking a sip of alcohol and feeling the mask just like melt away. It was one where it was like, for someone that was just sitting in angst and fear and sadness and trauma, to begin to feel any type of relief was like, holy shit, this is Shangri-La here. This is amazing. And, and so to continue to take that medicine, and I only knew what I knew at that time. And what I know today, of any time I take in anything that's going to mask my true feeling, that is going to numb, that is going to shove away, that just allowed me, I know today, it just allowed me to shove everything down further and further and further. Like, I was finding nooks and crannies that, holy shit, when I got sober, it was like I didn't know things could get stored away that far in there, just like, just I have the innate ability to dismiss it, push it away, come up, no, it's not that bad. I can minimize my family dying in a car accident in a way of, no, but at this and this and this, and, and that inability to choose to bring it on and feel, because enough of those life experiences, and there's a lot of pain in there, and so that's what my drinking was like. And the first week that I got sober, I didn't get sober here in Texas. I got sober in Las Vegas, because I don't know how y'all got sober here in Dallas. It was one where when I moved back here and people were like, how'd you do that? I was like, there was no way that I needed to go to Las Vegas. I like to go in a place of extremes, of like, if we're going to do this, yeah, bring on Nick Cage. Let's do this, But no, in my first week, I was at a speaker meeting. It was a Friday night. Someone got up and introduced herself, and she said, I'm an alcoholic. I think about drinking. I think about not drinking, and I drink even when I don't want to. And for someone that was just trying to find an answer in that way, to hear it just laid out that simple, I was like, I do all three of those. And so, I'm not going to spend a lot of time in like my drunkalog. Early on, I thought it was always cool. And then you spend 45 minutes of all these stories that you think are kick ass. And then you go through like 5 minutes of the steps. And then you're like, and then I'm sober and everything's great. And what I know today, almost 15 years of sobriety, which it's just a gift, this ruckus, riotous, astonishing gift of life. And it's really lifey a lot of times. And, and in a choice for me in pulling back as many layers as I possibly can to find my truest self today. That is the promise that I made to myself about 8 years into sobriety. And I'll get to that. There were a lot of consequences. There was compound fractures of femurs. There were jail stints. But that didn't make me alcoholic. What made me alcoholic was the fact that once I put that in, it was go time, and I did not know how to stop. And it was that. You bring in some childhood trauma and a little genetic tick in there, and it was ripe for just, when you want to talk about some white trash can punch, man, that was me to a T right there. It was like, it was napalm and Jim Beam just all mixed up. I will tell you one story. I was living in New York because, of course, I had to move around all around the country to get away from shit. And I'm living in New York. It's New Year's Eve. My friends get engaged that night. I meet them at the plaza. We take a limo down to this bar that my friend rents out in Soho. I'm wearing leather pants and a tuxedo shirt, and I brought so the sequence of events that I've been told happened over the course of the night. So we get there, and then I totally Beyonce'd, and within like 30 minutes, I did a wardrobe change because I had a Best Little Whorehouse t-shirt to change into so I could get on the dance floor. And so I get on the dance floor, I make out with two different women, and then I throw up on one of their shoes. And then I was asked to go sit down at a table, and I think Britney Spears' Slave for You came on, so I got up because, of course, that was my jam. And I'm dancing, but I just fall into the table, break the table, all the glasses on it, but I get up, I'm like, hey, everything's okay, we're good, start dancing, and then we just teeter it to 9 o'clock and take out that table and those glasses. They're like, you need to go sit up at the bar. I can't even sit up at the bar because when I get up there to sit up, I fall down and bust my lip open and bleeding everywhere. And they're like, go home. I'm like, sure. And so I'm walking home because I lived in the neighborhood. And I'm walking by a church, and it's holiday season, and there's a life-size nativity scene out there. And there's a guy walking this way. I'm walking this way. For New York, this dude was just minding his own business. He was just trying to get home, or he was just trying to go to point B. And in my zombie walk, talk, brain think, you know, he's walking by and I'm just like, hey, you got a problem? I mean, he didn't even look at me, I don't think. And he was like, no. And I start walking, and I kid you not, and I have a living amends for this annually now. I picked up Baby Jesus, and as kind of like a come back as a club. I don't know what it was for, but I can't say chasing him because I think I was just kind of just falling towards him with it. And then I realized that there was Baby Jesus in my hand, so I put it down. So every year on New Year's Eve, I go and find a life-size nativity scene, and I take a picture with the Baby Jesus there as just a living amends that, you know what, this one's saved for one more year. I got home, and I thought everything was fine. I called my parents the next day, and I was like, hey, Happy New Year. They're like, we know. I'm like, what do you mean we know? And they're like, you called us at 4 a.m. last night. And I was like, cool. But that was my thing, always wanting to connect. My need, that fear of abandonment and that desire to connect. And one of the things that happened when I was really going through my stuff was that I was going to people that didn't know what alcoholism was. So I was trying to get a solution. I was trying to ask for help for people that didn't know what my problem was. So I go somewhere and people would be like, you need to quit drinking. And I'm like, you need to go outside and play a game of hide and go blank yourself. Cause that just, cause that frightened me. Just that of quitting drinking. I'm like, y'all, you don't understand all this shit that I've dealt with for all these years and everything. This is the only thing that calms the beast. This is it. And then there comes a point where it's absolutely, you can't autocorrect it. And it's like, so I take more, but it's not doing anything except just causing my life more panic and havoc. But that's all I know to do. So lather, rinse, repeat. The cycle just keeps going. And so the first time that I really came across AA, I destroyed my room the night before because the emotionally unavailable girlfriend at the time said she didn't want to see me. And that was my best answer to dealing with it. And doing that and then trying to walk out on I-30 to have a car run me over because that was my best idea. I was done. And my roommate literally had to beat the shit out of me off that highway. So the next morning, I call my company's EAP program because I think I'm suffering depression and I just need a therapist. And so I call, and it's just this anonymous voice on the other end of the line. She's like, I'm like, yeah, I think I broke my hand. I was in a blackout drunk last night, all these things. This wasn't my mom. This wasn't a friend or anything. This was just a stranger. And it was just the kindest, just non-judgmental voice that just said, "Do you think you have a problem with your drinking?" I was like, "Ooh, I didn't want to hear that." And you know what? What I now know is at that time I just had like this little sliver of willingness that I said, you know what? I think I do. And so I start looking at, treatment centers and everything. And the ones like in Florida looked really good because they were on the beach. And God has a great sense of humor and says, yeah, why don't you go to an outpatient in Bedford? And, and as someone, like I said, growing up, I was always curious and in a seeking place of finding something greater than myself. I was raised in Methodist church. I always dug Methodist church. I didn't realize that at the time, but just the inclusivity of it and just the kindness that's there without judgment, that really resonated. But I went to temples. I went to all sorts of things because I'm like, no, there's more. And to have that cut off at that time, once everything, I was like, no, this is God, then I'm out. And so I walk in, and it's a 12-step program, and you're required to do the first 3 steps. And, the powerless, the unmanageability, I'm like, yeah, I can kind of see that. Coming to believe, I'm like, yeah, I got to step 3 though, reading step 3, and I couldn't get past make a decision to turn your will and your life over to the care of God as you understand it. I couldn't get to the part that was underlined right after God. I couldn't, because that just scared me, because I'm like, y'all don't get it. My God, we're not cool. This is just not a relationship that, look, I've been burned. I've gotten my ass kicked in this thing enough. I can't anymore. And then I also found the other guy that was about my age and that was also a smart ass. So I felt some sense of comfortability in there with it. And then I really did. I thought that thing of like, well, let me just I write and do shit for a living. I'm like, I can write this stuff out and they're just going to be amazed by these 3 steps that I write out. knowing today that, step 1 doesn't do anything unless it is a full inner conceding inside yourself, and you can't convince someone else. It is, for me, it was me and my God, and I know step 2 is just come to believe. It's like, hey, you maybe want to try this thing? That's all a test. Because this is the solution. You want to try it. You don't have to sign a contract or anything. You can just come to believe that a power greater than yourself could restore you to sanity. And then 3 is an action step of making that decision and then jumping into the work. And so, I wasn't ready at that time, but I was ready to move across country to Las Vegas because, why not? I white knuckled it for a little bit. And then I did something that, I finished the program. I went to a couple of meetings, and then I really thought of like, I just can't drink like I did. I was like, okay, cool. I got this. Because then here was the thing. I moved out to Las Vegas. I went out, I drank, and nothing happened. I was like, I got this shit down, and I'm not even wearing leather pants. This is great, Like, I got this thing. And let me tell you, it was, so that happened, that me walking out on the highway happened in January of 06. And I moved out to Las Vegas in August of 06. And by December, I'm in the spiral. And there's a bar across the street from me that's open 24 hours a day. and no one will talk to you, and it's dark, and it's great, and I'm working for a real estate marketing company in Las Vegas in 2006, 2007. Really great place to be in real estate at that time. And of course, the housing market absolutely implodes, and being at the epicenter of that, and trying to go to clients and trying to convince them that their $1 million contracts that they signed with my company were like, no, we can help you sign, in this. And it's like, it's all just caving in. It's all caving in. Job goes away, and I'm sitting in Las Vegas in the summertime, and, I probably weigh about 150 pounds, and I am gray, like the color gray, like this is just all, and I'm going on interviews, and, I'm to PR companies, and I'm sure I just came in, you want to talk about on a winning streak, and like, I couldn't imagine that they weren't hiring me, and so October comes around, rolling around, and I really felt at 31, I'm like, this is it. This is my life. This is my life. I would wake up in the morning and just be so disgusted and have so much shame for what was staring back at me. And I would wake up and I'd be like, I'm not drinking today. And I meant it. I meant it with all my heart. It was everything in me. I couldn't give a stronger conviction to myself. And I was just like in the book, I was across the street by 5:30, and I was pounding my hand on that bar top being like, why the fuck am I here? Why am I here? And it is the definition of insanity, and so it was a Friday night, and I was with my roommate, and we went and grabbed a couple of drinks, and then he left, and which I was the king of, happy hour. You're going to leave. I'm going to leave too. You're going to go over to your girlfriend's. I'm going to come back. Happy hour turns into happy half day, but that was the only place, I'm by myself. I'm seeing someone out there, and, and I'm just in a place of just, I'm in my own hell, And so, that happens. I come home, my girlfriend calls me, I slur my words, she hangs up. Saturday comes, and I spend all day trying to find someone to feel sorry for me. Like, can you believe she hung up on me? And, and I'm sure I called my mom at a certain point, and I'm sure she's sitting there rolling her eyes like, no, I can't believe this happened, Jarrod, not at all. And she called me back. We talked later, and she just said, I think you have a problem with your drinking. And I don't know what it was. It was step zero. There was a space of like, I can't do this anymore. I can't. And so I walked back across the street because I was like, okay, I need 2 more drinks. And I went across the street, and I shit you not, I've heard this enough in meetings and everything. People are like, yeah, I went across the street, I had those, and they did nothing. It is the biggest God shot on the planet of like, I'm like, yeah, 2 vodka sodas, no soda, and it does nothing. And I got home, and I was like, I need to go to an AA meeting. And what I know now, well, at first I had cried and had a little pity party. I just cried because there was a lot of fear, and there was a lot of unknown. And boy, that's the most beautiful thing about willingness, is that all it requires is just this little drop, just a little sliver. That's it. And just the amazing thing of how this world comes when, how it all lines up in those ways. And so I got online, and I found a meeting that on Sunday, and I didn't find the first meeting. I found the one that was closest to me. So this one wasn't until like 7:30 on Sunday night. So I woke up and got showered and put on my Sunday school clothes, and found like one of the only 2 Methodist churches in Las Vegas. And I went there, and I cried through the whole hour. this lady came up to me, and I was like, I can't stop drinking. She's like, okay, well, here's a pamphlet, and and so I went home, and I was like, all right, I gotta wear like my Kenneth Cole boots and all this kind of shit. I gotta look nice when I come in here. So like, no, y'all, I got this thing, figured out. And so, I just sat in my apartment and I just waited. And I finally got in the car and I drove to this meeting. And it was at a church, and it's a pretty big meeting. It was a Sunday night birthday meeting. And at that time, there was probably about 80 to 100 people that would go. So I pull up, but it was two things. I got out of my car and the doors were open because it was October, so it was beautiful out. And I just heard this laughter inside. I heard this warmth, connecting energy that I can't describe to you what it felt like to be a stranger and to feel that and connect with it in that way. And then I walk in, and then there's two greeters there, a lady, Janine and Karen. And Karen gave me a hug and said, welcome. And man, I just started bawling. I walked in and they were like, do you want to read how it works? I was like, abso-fucking-lutely not. It's like, no, let me sit in this corner. This woman gets up and picks up a chip for 24 years. And I'm like, what the fuck does this even mean? What does 24 years mean? I'm sitting on 24 hours. And then after that meeting, these two guys came up to me and, they gave me their numbers and they said, there's a men's meeting tomorrow. It's at this place. Maybe you should come. I'm like, okay. And that started the journey. That started the journey in Las Vegas. I got a sponsor and did the steps. And, it was an interesting time for me because my sponsor really wanted to be, we were talking about it earlier, but my sponsor really wanted to be like an AA superstar. And let me tell you, to have a male figure in my life that I could lay out the shame and the anger of my 4-step and all the bags of stuff that I was carrying for a long time, to at least begin to acknowledge it and share it with someone else and it be validated back, was the most healing thing on the planet. As someone that had just, craved that type of father figure, that type of male presence. AA's principles for personalities, and the personality part can kind of jump into it a little bit. And there was in that sobriety group, there was a lot of gossiping, there was a lot of kind of finger pointing back at others, and I could feel it inside, but I'm like, no, these are the people that I'm supposed to be with. But I would get like ostracized because I didn't do the right thing, which I've learned today of like, man, just don't drink. And this whole thing is a journey anyways. We're not going to do this thing perfectly. And yes, we set boundaries and we hold people accountable, but we hold people's hands through that. That's what I do today. Grace, empathy, and vulnerability. Those 3 traits for me, with my only one tangent on the greater point of life. If we could all do that on this planet, what just a glorious walk in the park this thing would be. And so I start dating someone in AA. She's sober too. Look at us. We are the superstar couple because we have the superstar sponsors and all this stuff. And I wasn't at a place yet that I knew that I attracted the same type of woman, which was basically my mom, because that's how I learned what love was. And so I had a very, very unbelievable knack of just being a tractor beam for emotional unavailability this way. And it's crazy because it's like, and when you're in it, it's like, no, because that is how I learned what love was. That's how my brain got programmed. And, and so she's sober. We get along fine. So we should get married, you know? And, you know, we were really good for one another. You know, she helped me help build my self-worth as I was kind of building my career. And I really helped her get through school so she could become a marriage and family therapist, which is pretty funny today. But, you know, we got married in sobriety, and, you know, in a year into it, we realized that it's like, this doesn't work. I mean, like, I didn't know what my needs were. I just knew that this wasn't it. And she did too. And, boy, and when I went through that divorce, my sponsor stopped because he didn't approve of us being together in a way of, he could see that, like, hey, maybe y'all aren't the best for you. I learned this when I sponsor guys today. You are a grown man. You are going to make the decisions that you do. I can offer you guidance, and I can love you along the way regardless, you know. And I'm very grateful for those lessons, because I needed those lessons to reaffirm what it felt for me inside to be an unconditional love to anyone. And so, you know, I moved back to, you know, so at that time I thought, you know, I'm going through this divorce. Let me tell you, I will say this, getting a divorce in Nevada, less than a year and without any kids, dude, that thing finishes in like 3 weeks. It was beginning and end like that. And, you know, and I had some nieces and nephews back here in Texas, and I was like, you know what, it might be good to move back here. You know, I'd been out in Las Vegas for 7 years. And 2 days later, a friend calls and says, hey, I want to try to build up my broadcast department. Would you be open to moving back to Texas? I was like, all right, God. And then like the next day, our house sold, and it was definitely one of those kind of like God flow moments where I'm like, all right, I'm just going to ride this wave. I see what's happening here, and cool, man, you got this. Sweet. You know, and so I moved back here, and, you know, I immediately jumped in. You know, I mean, I was really afraid to leave my support group of 7 years. And it felt like this was the next place. You know, I joked about it at the beginning, but, you know, I'd move back and forth here every once in a while. I'm like, I just kept napalming this place, and, you know, and it felt right to come home. And, you know, I'll say, you know, I jumped right in. I found a men's meeting, Preston group on Saturday mornings, because I tried to mimic my program in Las Vegas that I had here. That's what I heard, you know. And so, you know, I found a men's group on Saturday mornings. You know, I didn't find a Sunday night birthday group, but I found this weird kind of wacky group in Lakewood that shows up late, but they're a lot of fun. And, you know, and it was definitely, there were people that really reminded me of that Sunday night group. And I got a sponsor that he lives in Santa Fe now, is just the kindest, gentlest soul, and loves me regardless of what happens. And so, you know, I jumped into AA, and my life was just going, it was awesome being back here. I mean, it was so great. You know, I got divorced in October. So like I moved back here. I mean, it finalized in October. I'm here in November, and I'm like, I'm back home, and I'm seeing all these people, and it's the holidays, and it's fantastic. I get through the holidays, and that whole thing with my divorce and everything just comes like I was sitting on my kitchen counter doing some work, and I got hit by a truck of like, holy smokes. And, you know, I had dinner with some friends of mine back in Christmas, and they're like, are you seeing a therapist, anything along those lines? I was like, no, not yet. They're like, well, you know, whenever you're ready to, we have one. I'm like, yeah, we're good. And boy, I'm sitting on the floor of my kitchen, and I text my buddy David. I'm like, send me that effing number right now. And I say this, AA has given me this foundation to to go through life and to clean up my side of the street, to be accountable, to relieve myself of alcoholism, the obsession, and to connect with my God. Now, when it comes to other things, I need professional help. And I think that is so vital for me, because a sponsor is not medically licensed from a standpoint of understanding childhood trauma or walking through a divorce. And I really talk about that today because it is very, very important. I heard forever, and I still hear today, people that are between 5 to 10 years, they go back out. A lot of people go back out. And I remember hearing that early on. And I was like, really? Why? And they're like, you want to know why? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, because they stopped going to meetings. And I'm like, well, you know what? That is not going to be me. So my life is going great. I'm deciding to clean up my side of the street with my marriage and to begin to go into therapy and to understand those things. But I'm sponsoring guys. I wait about a year and I start dating someone. Holy shit, she's emotionally unavailable too, and hadn't sensed that pattern yet. But here's the crazy thing: like, I'm about 5-6 years sober, and really, it wasn't for lack of look. I don't know what I don't know, and boy, things that we've stowed away for decades and decades, you start trying to touch that stuff, and it is finger to a stove. There's a reason why a lot of us stay on the surface level. You start digging deep and it's like, no. I'm not going to go there. But I started feeling that stuff more and more and more. And then this woman left and I immediately found someone in the program here to I jumped from one relationship into the next. That fear, and it was like, I need this. Let me tell you, 2015 was the most chaotic year of my life. I am dating someone in this program that I know is, that is abusing Adderall, that I know she's emotionally cheating on me, and I can't leave. I'm so frightened. And I'm talking to my sponsor about it. I'm talking through my therapist about it. I stopped seeing my therapist for about 3 months because I don't want to hear what she has to fucking say. And I'm really not bringing it up with my sponsor because I really don't want what he has to say. And I'm just trying to do. I love surrender. And I will squeeze every last drop of control out of me until I surrender. Sometimes I can kind of see and be like, yeah, okay, we're good. There's other things, though, that it's like, nope, I am going to just white knuckle this thing and get there. It is absolute chaos. And it got to Christmas time of that year. I'm back down on the ground on my kitchen in more pain than I'd been than when I got sober. And what I really know today is, those first 8 years, I did a lot of work and did a lot of amends and I truly know this, that the real stuff was really coming up and I was ready to really look at it. And I don't know how to describe that other than, my fog was pretty dense for, those first 8 years of sobriety. And what I'm getting at when people talk about people going back out in that 5 to 10 year window. And I've known a lot of people in both sides that have stayed in it and that have gone out because, look, sobriety is hard. Drinking is hard. Life is hard. Choose your hard. And I think God does this wonderful thing that just kind of drips a little bit to us a little bit at a time so we can get some wins behind and we can feel involved with our groups. We can, find the like-minded thing, be around, a message. And then the real stuff's going to hit, and it did. And, to begin to let go and to understand the patterns of, the type of love that I accepted, and to begin to release that and to begin to learn how to, I would just I would give you everything that I had, and you would take it, because I'd find the person that didn't know how to give it back, because I'd never gotten it back. I just knew just how to empty it and let you go away, and then be like, I don't understand what's going on here. Then I'd just go to the other person. And that was in all walks of life, that people pleasing. If I gave you this, you're going to give it back to me, right? And, I had to relook at, when I redid my fourth and fifth step that year, the stuff that came up, from my parents that I had already done a fourth and fifth step on, but that came because I've learned this too. The more I choose to pull the layers back, this thing is a journey, and it just keeps going deeper and deeper and deeper. And more comes up, and we don't know it until we get into it. That's what I've learned about this thing. Life is not a theory. We can come in here and we can learn all this stuff in this, in a step study. We can go to a therapist and learn all these different type of cognitive patterns and shit. And then you got to go out in life and do it. And you got to fuck it up, and you got to get bumpy with it, because in those bumps is where the magic happens. It is. That's where we learn. That's where I learned to really love and grow. And so, that's, like I said, therapy is a huge part of my story, because, I see the same therapist now. I've seen her for 8 years, because there's more to pull back, more to learn. There's more for me to understand how to be accountable for myself, but how to hold boundaries to people, what it is to give myself a voice and it not be about what's said back. For years, I didn't know how to give myself a voice. I was just the kid that just hid in the corner. And here's the thing, I would not have that if I didn't have AA. AA is my absolute spiritual foundation. It is my problem solution. So if I wasn't getting solutions in this thing, like during that time when I went to another 12-step program, and I was like, hell yeah, I can do this. There's one for sex and love addiction. This is going to be awesome, because I'm so solution oriented in this thing. I went in there, and it was just, they talk about in AA meetings, like, I never leave one feeling worse. Let me tell you, I went to those meetings and I felt like absolute shit when I left those. Because what it was, I was around a bunch of people, no one was in solution, so it was just people just piling their stuff, and I was like, whoa. I was like, you seen that Homer Simpson meme when he just kind of like backs up into the bush? That was just me. I was like, let me get out of here. Because I had years of wins in this deal. If I wasn't getting years of wins with y'all in this, there's no way I would go and seek something else, And then I also know, just like, I need to go find those things. And so my life today is always in motion. I left one of the last areas that I've really had as far as trying to align my spiritual and my personal world was my professional world. So I moved back to Las Vegas on March 1 of 2020 to launch a brand. It was really awesome timing to move cross country to start a new job. And one of the things that I realized, and so I got out there, and a big part of my work history has been working in very toxic, very narcissistic environments. And so where I've done all this work on all these different areas of my life, that professional life was still the one that wasn't aligning. And it just, I'd go into that thing for 8 hours a day in my work world and just, be around shame and belittlement and all kinds of stuff, but then just try to go live like, I'm skipping on a sunbeam with Jesus when I walk out of there. And, thankfully I was only out there for 6 months, because I realized, and I explained to them, if I'm doing this job on my kitchen counter in Las Vegas, what's the difference of me doing it kitchen counter back in Dallas? They're like, good point. So I was able to come back, and, I was able to, try to find as many different solutions as I could, running this brand, and it being met with closed doors or square peg round hole. And so finally, at the end of August, it was an insanely well-paying job. And I was living the life of, you could not pay me enough to do blank. And, I stepped away, And, within this last few, 8 months was really a time for me to reflect and again, go find people that could help me center in the things that where I'm at personally and what I need professionally, and finding a company to do that. And so, I've gotten a chance to consult with a couple of businesses, and I started interviewing, and words like empathetic leadership are incredibly important to me. And I hear that companies want that. And then I get on these interviews and I bring that up, and you can just see the recruiter on the other side a lot of times just, I will be in like AA speakage to them, and they are looking like they're talking to an alien, But I know this, my therapist told me this years ago, and she said, Jarrod, as you get healthier, that pool of people out there gets smaller. And she was talking to me about dating at that time, and what I've kind of learned that's across the swath of people. And where it was, I felt the need that I needed to be this all-star in all these areas of the life. I live a simple, plain, and ordinary life today. While I choose to try to find a place that I can show up and be myself in all areas and not compromise for that. And that's a journey. It's an absolute journey. And there's some days that it's awesome. And I got to tell you, this week has sucked. And, it was definitely one of those this morning. The last thing I wanted to do was come hang out with y'all on a Saturday night. I was like, nope. I was like, F that. And I co-chair a meeting with my sponsor on Saturday mornings, and we're just laughing about it. And he's like, all right, have a good time tonight. I was like, yeah, thanks. The difference between, and I'll end with this though, of, feeling a lot. And I'm an empath. I'm a feeler, man. And I feel it to the core, and I get vulnerability hangovers like nobody's business. Unlike those other meetings, that I went to that I felt worse after. Just even coming in and trying to do my best to look at every person and to really connect. I feel, this thing works, man. And there's just one alcoholic talking to another. And, there is no right or wrong. There is no good or bad. There is no absolutes in life. There isn't. This thing is just about kindness and communication and love to one another. And boy, I feel the wrench in the lack of communication today with people, and looking in someone's eyes and just asking them how they're doing and connecting. That's what humans were put here for. We were put here to engage with other humans. And so any time now that I can, to be face to face with, just love and kindness in others is an absolute gift. So I'm really, really grateful to be here tonight, y'all. I can't thank y'all enough. And that's it. Thank you.